All right, here we go. This is a bit wild, even for me. And trust me, I've seen some stuff. I'm still trying to wrap my head around how it all went down, but here's what happened that day. It was just a normal Tuesday, or so I thought, serving tables at La Fleur, that fancy French place downtown. I was juggling trays and trying to remember which fork goes where for table 7 when this guy walks in. Ricardo Lemos. You know the Ricardo Lemos, the one whose face is plastered on every business magazine, always looking smug. I'd heard stories about him, how he was a bit of a lot. So he gets seated at one of my tables, right by the window, naturally, and almost immediately, he starts being that customer. You know the type, right? The one who acts like they're doing you a favor by just being there. He orders, and when it comes to the wine, he points to this super expensive Bordeaux, Chateau Margaux, and pronounces it like he's never seen a French word in his life. I mean, it was almost comical, but you just bite your tongue, right? But then he goes, and make sure it's actually good, not some cheap swill. You probably wouldn't know the difference anyway. That really got under my skin, but I just took a deep breath. I just stood there for a second, my brain doing a quick scramble, my studies in gastronomy, all those late nights memorizing regional vineyards and proper pronunciation, they just kind of flashed through my mind. And then, without even thinking, it just came out. Monsieur, I started and I heard my own voice, clear as a bell, speaking French. If I may, Chateau Margaux is indeed exquisite, but for your chosen dish, the Chateau Palme from the same appellation might offer a more harmonious balance of notes, with its subtle hints of violet and a smoother finish. I even managed to correct his mispronunciation of Margot ever so gently, slipping it into my sentence. I swear, it was like someone else was speaking. The look on his face? Priceless. My jaw just kind of hung there for a second. He was clearly not expecting that. He'd probably expected me to stammer or just meekly agree. Instead, I just schooled him on his own wine choice in fluent French, no less. He blinked a couple of times, then a slow, almost imperceptible smile started to form. It wasn't the usual arrogant smirk, but something different. He just nodded, a slight tilt of his head, and said, "All right then, bring me the Palmer." The whole interaction lasted only a minute, maybe 2, but it felt like an eternity. And that was it. That was the moment everything just shifted. The rest of the night, things felt different. Every time I passed his table, I could feel his eyes on me. Not in a creepy way, more like he was genuinely curious, trying to figure something out. It was a strange sensation, like the air around him had changed from frosty to intrigued. I focused on my other tables, trying to act like nothing out of the ordinary had happened. But inside, my heart was doing this weird little dance. It wasn't excitement, not really, but more a mix of disbelief and a weird sort of satisfaction. I'd stood my ground, not just as a waitress, but as someone who actually knew her stuff. Later, when I was clearing his table, he stopped me. He didn't say anything grand, no apologies or big compliments. He just looked at me, a direct, almost assessing gaze. Then he simply said, "You have a good head on your shoulders, and good taste." It was understated, almost quiet, but the way he said it, like he was genuinely impressed, it landed differently than any polite praise. It wasn't about the restaurant or the wine anymore. It felt like he was seeing me, Sophia, for the first time. And for a brief moment, standing there amidst the clatter was plates and hushed conversations, it felt like something significant had just begun. After he left, the shift blurred into a haze, My mind kept replaying that brief exchange, the way he looked at me, and that quiet, almost personal compliment. It was weird because you deal with so many different kinds of people in a restaurant, and most of the time they just see a uniform. But with him, for a few seconds, it felt like I was seen as more than just the waitress. It made me wonder, what was it about that moment that made him pause? Was it just the French or something else entirely? I went home that night still buzzing, a strange mix of exhilaration and confusion swirling inside me. It wasn't about the money or even the prestige of impressing a millionaire. It was the unexpectedness of it all. How a mundane Tuesday serving tables could suddenly turn into something that felt significant. It was a tiny crack in the usual routine, a fleeting connection that left me with more questions than answers. It was just one of those moments that sticks with you, like a tiny ripple that could become something bigger, even if you can't quite see how yet. All right, so it had been about a week since that crazy night with Ricardo Limos. I'd honestly tried to push it to the back of my mind, figure it was just a one-off, a weird blip in my waitressing career. But then there he was again, walking into Le Fleur, alone this time, which was unusual for someone like him. And the moment he stepped through the door, his eyes scanned the room until they landed on me. My stomach did that weird flip again, the one that's a mix of nerves and something else I couldn't quite name. He didn't make a big fuss, no grand entrance or anything, just a quiet nod to the maitre d', and then I heard it. I'd prefer to be seated in Miss Sophia's section tonight if she's available. My heart definitely skipped a beat. It wasn't the arrogant demand from before. It was more like a request, almost polite. When I approached his table, ready to go into my usual professional spiel, he actually smiled. A real smile, not just a thin-lipped smirk. It was disarming to say the least, and immediately I could. This evening was going to be different. He started by asking for my recommendations, not just for the wine, but for the food too. What do you truly believe pairs best with the pan-seared scallops tonight, Sophia? He asked, his tone genuinely curious, like he actually wanted to hear my opinion. It was such a stark contrast to our first encounter, where he'd practically dismissed me before I'd even opened my mouth. I talked him through a few options, explaining the subtle nuances of each dish and how they'd complement certain wines. He listened intently, nodding occasionally, and even asked follow-up questions, which honestly threw me for a loop. It felt less like a transaction and more like a real conversation, two people discussing something they both appreciated. Then, out of nowhere, he apologized. Sophia, he began, a slight hesitation in his voice. I owe you an apology for my behavior last week. It was uncalled for and, frankly, quite rude. You clearly possess a remarkable depth of knowledge, and I was dismissive. I was genuinely taken aback. I mean, who expects that from someone like him? He then looked directly at me, a hint of something earnest in his eyes, and said, I'd like to make amends. Would you consider having dinner with me, outside of these walls, as myself, not as a client, and you not as my server? The offer hung in the air, unexpected and, to be honest, a little thrilling. I remember just standing there, holding my breath for a second. My mind raced, weighing the surprise against the sheer audacity of the invitation. It wasn't just the fact that he was a millionaire. It was the abrupt shift in his demeanor, the genuine apology, the unexpected vulnerability. My usual response would be to politely decline, to keep things strictly professional. But there was something in his eyes, a kind of hopeful curiosity that made me pause. It was a moment of pure decision, a fork in the road I hadn't even known existed a few minutes prior. I finally managed to find my voice, a little breathless, and simply said, I I would like that, Mr. Lemos. He visibly relaxed, a genuine smile spreading across his face. We exchanged numbers then, a quick, almost clandestine moment, as I jotted it down on the spare napkin. The rest of his dinner went smoothly, and he seemed genuinely happy, almost lighter. It was bizarre, truly, how quickly the dynamic had changed from a condescending client to something else entirely. That night, I went home not just buzzing with surprise, but with a strange sense of anticipation, wondering what this unexpected invitation would lead to. The days that followed were a blur of nervous excitement. Every time my phone buzzed, I found myself checking it, half expecting, half dreading a message from him. It felt like something out of a movie, which is exactly what I wanted to avoid, but the anticipation was undeniably real. I kept replaying our last conversation, the genuine look in his eyes when he apologized, the way he seemed to genuinely see me. It was so far removed from the image I had of him, of the Ricardo Lemos, the impenetrable businessman. This felt human. When his text finally came, it was simple, direct. Sophia, are you free for dinner on Friday? No elaborate setup, no flowery language, just a straightforward question. And in that moment, all my apprehension seemed to melt away. It was happening. This unexpected turn, born from a mispronounced French word and the condescending comment, was actually unfolding. It was bewildering, a truly bizarre curveball life had thrown, and I found myself oddly eager to see where this surprising new path would lead. All right, so Ricardo's dinner invitation was buzzing in my head. My mind was a total mess, torn between the excitement of it all and this nagging voice of caution. I mean, my whole life it's been about working hard, staying focused, and never mixing business with, well, anything else. And then there was Daniela, my best friend, always been super protective, especially when it comes to guys with money. Sophia, she'd said, giving me that look. These rich clients, they're usually just looking for a new toy. Don't get tangled up in something that's gonna end in tears. Her words, even though I knew they came from a good place, just added to my internal tug of war. I was seriously leaning towards politely declining, trying to figure out how to phrase it without sounding rude, when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but it had a Paris area code. My heart practically leapt out of my chest. It was my Aunt Elisa. Now, my Aunt Elisa isn't just any aunt. She's this incredible, renowned chef in Paris, practically a legend in the culinary world. We talk, but she's always so busy, so a call from her is a big deal. Her voice was just as vibrant as I remembered, and then she dropped the bombshell. Sophia, ma chérie, I have the most exciting news. I'm in Catanduva, and guess who arranged my accommodations and invited me to an exclusive wine event tonight? None other than Ricardo Lemos. My jaw must have hit the floor. She went on explaining how Ricardo had somehow known she was coming to Brazil, found out she was my aunt, and then extended this incredible invitation. And darling, she continued, her voice full of knowing excitement, he specifically mentioned your exceptional knowledge of wine, saying it would be a shame if you weren't there. He made it clear he wants you to attend. I swear the phone almost slipped from my hand. It was one thing for him to ask me to dinner, but to involve my aunt, to know about her, and then essentially insist on my professional presence at this exclusive event, it was just wild. Aunt Elisa, being Aunt Elisa, didn't miss a beat. Sophia, this isn't just about him, she said, her tone suddenly serious. This is an incredible professional opportunity for you. Networking, seeing the best of the best. And yes, she added, a fine wine. A real fine wine. Mischievous lilt returning to her voice. Perhaps a chance to explore this connection you seem to have made. Don't be foolish, ma petite. Some doors open for a reason. Seize it. Her words, coming from someone I respected so deeply, someone who embodied professional success and passion, cut through all my doubts. It wasn't just a date anymore. It was an unexpected twist of fate, intertwining my personal life with a potential professional breakthrough, all orchestrated by the very man I was about to turn down. The day of the wine event arrived, and honestly, I was a bundle of nerves. Walking into that lavish hall filled with important-looking people and the clinking of glasses, I felt completely out of my element. My aunt, Elisa, was a rock star, introducing me to people, subtly highlighting my wine knowledge, making me feel a little less like an imposter. But even with her by my side, the sheer scale of the event and the fact that Ricardo Lemos was hosting it made my palms sweat. It was a world away from the restaurant. Then I saw him, Ricardo. He was different this night. Not just in a suit, but his whole demeanor. He was moving through the crowd, talking to people. But there was a genuine warmth, a quiet pride radiating from him. He caught my eye and walked straight over, a relaxed smile on his face. Sophia, I'm so glad you could make it. And Elisa, it's wonderful to see you again. He led us to a quieter corner, away from the main hubbub, and that's when he started talking about his real passion. He began to speak about Brazilian wines, his voice laced with an undeniable enthusiasm hadn't seen before. It wasn't the detached knowledge of a connoisseur. It was deeply personal. He told us about his late grandfather, a man who had dedicated his life to a small vineyard, dreaming of producing world-class Brazilian wine, but who had never quite seen his vision recognized. Ricardo's eyes, usually so intent and piercing, softened as he talked about this man, the effort he put into each vintage, his pride in Brazilian wines. Those eyes were sharp and analytical, softened as he spoke, a hint of melancholy in their depths. He wasn't the arrogant millionaire anymore. He was a grandson, sharing a cherished, almost painful memory. Then he did something incredibly unexpected. He produced a single unlabeled bottle from a discreet bag he was carrying. This, he said, looking directly at me, a flicker of vulnerability in his eyes, is something very special. It's the first production from my grandfather's vineyard in decades. He poured us each a small taste, and as I swirled the deep red liquid in my glass, the aroma hit me. Complex, earthy, with a surprising depth. We tasted it together, sharing observations. Our conversation flowed effortlessly between technical notes and genuine appreciation. It was then clear that our shared passion for viticulture went beyond superficial interactions. That's when he revealed his secret, a quiet confession that completely took me by surprise. I secretly bought the vineyard years ago, he admitted, his gaze intense, and I've been working to revitalize it, bringing it back to life, honoring my grandfather's dream. The wine we were tasting wasn't just a random Brazilian vintage, it was a testament to his dedication, his hidden devotion to a legacy. It was an incredibly personal moment, shared amidst the opulence of the event, and it solidified something profound between us. It wasn't just about business or social status anymore. It was about shared values, a mutual respect for passion, and a deeper understanding of who he really was beyond the public facade. This was a side of Ricardo Limos that very few, if any, ever got to see. The wine event eventually wound down, but Ricardo wasn't ready for the night to end. He led me away from the lingering guests, not to some flashy club, but to a private rooftop garden connected to the venue. It was a hidden gem, bathed in the soft glow of string lights, with the breathtaking view of the Catanduva skyline. The air was the cooler up there, and the quiet hum of the city below felt a million miles away. We sat down on a comfortable bench, and for the first time, it felt like there were no pretenses, no roles to play. It was just us. We talked for what felt like hours, the conversation flowing effortlessly from one topic to another. We shared stories about our lives, not just the highlights, but the struggles, the dreams, even the fears. He told me more about the pressure of living up to his family's name, the loneliness that came with his position, and I found myself opening up about my own anxieties, my drive to make my mark in gastronomy, and the sometimes overwhelming weight of expectation. It was an incredibly raw and honest exchange, far deeper than I ever could have imagined with someone I had initially dismissed as just another arrogant millionaire. Then he looked at me, a genuine, almost humble expression on his face. "Sophia," he began, his voice soft but clear, "I need to apologize again for how I acted that first night. Your challenge, your directness, it was truly enlightening. It forced me to actually see you, to see beyond my own assumptions. It led to all of this, to us." His words hung in the air, a profound acknowledgement of how our unlikely connection had started. It wasn't just a polite gesture. It felt like a true realization, a turning point for him. Then he presented an idea, something that made my heart leap. "The harvest at my grandfather's vineyard is approaching," he said, his eyes lighting up. "I'd be honored if you would consider joining me there, not as a guest, but as an unofficial consultant. Your expertise, your palate, it would be invaluable." It was clear this was more than just a job offer. It was an invitation into his world, a tangible step towards something more. It was his way of saying he wanted me there, by his side, professionally and personally. I didn't hesitate. "I'd be honored, Ricardo," I said, a smile spreading across my face. "I can truly participate in the harvest. I want to get my hands dirty, to be a part of the actual work." It was my condition, a way of showing him that I wasn't interested in just being a spectator, but a genuine partner. He laughed, a warm, genuine sound I was quickly growing to love. "That's exactly what I hoped you'd say," he responded, his eyes sparkling. As the night ended, standing there on that rooftop, looking out at the city lights, it felt like the beginning of something truly special. We both knew it. Our journey, born from an unexpected clash of personalities and an apology delivered in French, was just starting. It was built on a foundation of mutual respect, a shared passion that ran deeper than just wine, and a willingness to look beyond the superficial. It was incredible, really, how a single day could change everything, and how two people from such different worlds could find such an authentic and hopeful connection.